Hi everyone, in this video I will show you how you can create your usage counter and how you can make sure to assess the database in order to update it or add new users. So let's see how this is done in practice. So here guys, just under the get fingerprint, we'll create a new function called get usage counter, and the idea is that here we will either get the usage counter for a particular fingerprint, or if this fingerprint doesn't exist, we will add it in the database with a count of 0. So let's create a new function, def get usage counter, then let's add fingerprint here, and then let's do con. So this will be our connection. So I will connect to the database. So let's do dot connect app.db. So we'll connect to the database. Then let's do c equals to connect.cursor. And then let's do c execute. And here we'll add some SQL language when assessing the database. So what I want here is to create a table if it doesn't exist. So let's write create table if not exists users, and then fingerprint text, and then usage counter integer. Okay, this means that if our database doesn't exist, we'll create a fingerprint key which is going to be text and usage counter which is going to be an integer. So now once we're connected to the database, we can actually do what is the purpose of that function or get the usage counter for a particular fingerprint. So I will do result equals to c dot. So bear in mind that c element is basically what allows us to send commands to the database. So let's do execute, and then we will do select usage counter. Okay, so we're selecting usage counter from users where fingerprint is equal to question mark. Okay, so basically we want to select the usage counter of a specific fingerprint that is equal to, so let's do here comma, and then we want to put the current fingerprint that we pass to the function. So you can do that by writing square brackets fingerprint. Okay, let's close the bracket and I will remove this one from here. Okay, and then let's do dot fetch one. Okay, so we want only one field, so let's place it like this, and now the result will be equal to the usage counter for the particular fingerprint. Now we need to make sure that if the browser fingerprint doesn't exist in the database, we're going to insert a new browser fingerprint with a usage counter of 0. Because if a user accesses our app for first time, obviously we want its usage counter to be 0 since the user have never used our application. So let's do if result is none, which means that there was no usage counter for that particular fingerprint. Then we'll connect to the database. So let's do connect SQLite tree dot connect app.db. Then let's do c equals to connect dot cursor. Then let's do c dot execute, and let's do insert into users. Okay, so we want to insert now the new fingerprint. So let's do fingerprint usage counter, and then the values should be the fingerprint and usage counter of 0. So you can do values, and then in the brackets, if you do question mark comma 0, and then here in the square brackets you can do fingerprint. Okay, and this will assign the fingerprint that we pass to the function to the place of the question mark. Okay, I will place this to the next line so it's more representable, and I will do this with the function on the top too. Okay, and after that our job in this if statement will be done. So let's do connection dot commit and then connection dot close. Okay, and let's actually close the connection here above. So I will also do connection dot close. Okay, and then here I will return 0 if this happens, and then let's do else I want to return the result, right? The result at position 0, which will return my usage counter. So if the usage counter for this particular ID doesn't exist, so this browser ID or fingerprint doesn't exist, we will return 0 for the usage counter. But if it exists, we're gonna get it from the database and we will return it. Now let's create another function in which we're going to update the usage counter. So far we have the function to get it, to get the usage counter, to get the fingerprint, and to create a database. Now we need a function that will update the usage counter. So once we access the application, or once we use the application one time, this usage counter should update with 1. Okay, so let's do here def update usage counter, and then we'll do fingerprint usage counter. Okay, so obviously in order to update the usage counter, we need the current usage counter and the fingerprint. So let's do connect equals to SQLite 3 dot connect app dot db, and then let's do c equals to connect dot cursor, and then let's do c dot execute, and let's do update users set usage counter equal to question mark. So we'll add this in square brackets here, where fingerprint equals to question mark. So let's put this bracket here, and after that I'll put usage counter and fingerprint, right? And then let's add a comma, so this will be accepted. So the idea would be to increment the usage counter with 1 once the user access this post method, right? And then pass the new usage counter and the fingerprint to that function and update it. Then let's do connection.commit and connection.close. And this is how we'll exit the database. Now into our index function, we will firstly need to initialize the database. So let's run this function. Okay, then we'll need to find the fingerprint. So let's do fingerprint equals to get fingerprint, and this will basically get the fingerprint of the user browser. Then we want to create a usage counter. So usage counter will be equal to get usage counter and then fingerprint. Okay, so if you're a new user, the usage counter, as I said, will be equal to 0. If you're not a new user, it will be equal to wherever it is saved in the database. So once this is done, let's add some logic inside our post method. So let's say if usage counter, which is this variable, so this is the usage counter specific to the fingerprint of the user, is higher than, and here you can choose how many times you want the user to access your application. So if the usage counter is higher than, let's say 3, then I want to run my payment.html file. So let's do return render template, and then let's do payment.html. Okay, so now let's run our application. Obviously, we don't have yet the payment.html, but let's see if the database will be created successfully. So let's run that. And here is our link. So this is our application. And let's write some basic code. Print 1, syntax error. Let's fix the code, and you can see that our application worked fine. But the most important thing that we care about is if we click here now, you can see that your database has just been created. Okay, and also here is the browser ID that you have, and this comes from the print statement here. So I added some statement to print it here, and this is the browser fingerprint that you have in your database, okay, with a specific usage counter. And the most important part is that even if you stop your application, this browser ID and the usage counter for this specific browser ID will still be saved in your database. So once you're done with that, go here in the end of the function and just before the fixed code. So once you execute all the functions, actually you can place it below. So once you execute all the functions here, you need to update the usage counter. Otherwise, it will always stay to 0. So I will do usage counter plus equals 1, and then since we used our application once, we updated the usage counter with 1, and then I want to pass this updated usage counter to the fingerprint. So let's do fingerprint, comma, usage counter. Okay, so this will go to this function here, and we'll update with 1 our usage counter. And then let's write here print usage counter, so we can see here below the usage counter that we print, and also here in the get fingerprint function I also added a statement that will print our fingerprint. So let's run that. Let's open the application, and now we need to check for two very important things. First one is for our database, so let's do print 1, okay, and you can see that we've got our code fixed, right? But also if I go back, you can see that our database has been created, okay? So our usage counter is still equal to 0. So let's do pretty much the same thing. So we can see if our usage counter will get updated. Okay, let's run that again. And you can see that the counter is now equal to 1 for this particular user ID. Let's do it again. So now it's equal to 2. Let's do it again. So it's equal to 3. Okay. And now since it is higher than 3, let's run this again. Okay. Let's run the code. And you can see that now our code failed. So we got internal server error. And this is because we still don't have our payment.html file. So once we create this file, we will be able to add payment to our application from here. And you see that if I stop the application and I run it again, and I try to do something with the code, right, to fix some code, you see that I will immediately try to go again to the payment.html, because since we have database, now our application remembers the browser ID of the user, so it will never allow it to use the application until it moves to a paid subscription. So thanks for watching, guys, and in the next video we will build the payment.html file and we'll add also the payment function here.